Putin continues to bomb Ukrainian cities, but Trump still calls him and gets angry with Zelensky. Did Friedrich Merz or the Republicans manage to convince Trump to impose sanctions against Russia, against the aggressor country? This and other topics we discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report, Rashkin Report in English. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The Russian Ministry of Defense called the overnight massive attack on Ukraine a response to terrorist acts. Due to Moscow's actions, 3 Ukrainians were killed and dozens injured, according to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. The Russian ministry states that the strike was carried out with long-range weapons of air, sea and land-based deployment, as well as strike unnamed aerial vehicles. The Russian Federation claims that the alleged targets were military objects, but we see that this is only a house of people, of Ukrainians, without no military targets even around these houses. Kit Kellogg's daughter said to father that loud night in Kiev date are dead. I get the feeling Russians don't want peace. But I don't think either Kellogg or Trump fully understand this, that Russia don't want peace. And how do they not understand that Putin continues to kill us simply because he wants to? That these are not revenge attacks, but simply an escalation of the war.
Because Donald Trump doesn't want to see this. He is in control of his own reality. And when the first time he seems to have been notified of anything is when Putin tells him that there was an attack on Russia. That's the first time that he spoke about it. And then Trump refers to it as, I guess there's been some fighting going on both sides, which reminds us of the march in Charlottesville in 2018 when he said that there were good people on both sides. His ability to morally equalize different, very unequal sides immediately and quickly and immediately is stunning. But here it's pretty obvious that Vladimir Putin, in his desire to exact revenge on Ukrainians who really put him in the position that he wants to be everybody else in, which is uncertainty. Uncertainty is what's important for Donald Trump. Hey, not sure what's going to be happening, come back in 2 weeks, and uncertainty is good for Putin. But at this point, all of a sudden, uncertainty is the currency that Ukraine has in large amounts, because nobody can be certain when there could be a truck that pulls up to any installation anywhere in Russia, and there's a lot of space in Russia. That's the biggest space to guard outside of outer space, I suppose, the biggest country in the world that would be difficult to guard. So it creates a lot of uncertainty, which is an important feature here. And therefore, all of a sudden, Ukraine is in a very strong position and certainly doesn't look like a country that's just needing to get, punishment, like a runaway slave or somebody, a servant who went against their master and therefore needs to be punished. Ukraine is not acting this way, but it's very clear that Donald Trump is able to see things this way because he understands punishment and revenge. So I think it's important, the clarity, that when we get the clarity out of this exchange with Donald Trump, with what's going on right now, because Vladimir Putin is attacking apartment buildings, like you said, while Ukraine is attacking military installations, Putin is attacking apartment buildings that are not moving, that are not running, and that really have just people hiding in there, and they're being terrorized. And these latest attacks were able to kill 4 people and injure 50, 60 people. That's the achievement. If we're looking at this as a terrorist attack, It's horrible. It's a crime. If we look at this as a response for attack that changed the world of warfare, which is what Ukraine has done at least once with a drone attack, and possibly with a third at the latest attack on the Crimea bridge. But at this point, definitely with drones, the response from Putin has been underwhelming. And it doesn't mean that he won't try again or that he doesn't have goals that he wants to meet. But at this point, it's important to, I feel, acknowledge that this is something that Donald Trump understands as well. Putin is not ready to stop. Putin will want to conquer Ukraine. Putin will be doing it for as long as he's able to, as long as he's capable of pressing the pedal and to give the command. And therefore, it is crucially important that when he presses the gas pedal, nothing happens. And that's what I think we're starting to see more and more, although still at a terrible cost because everything here is a war crime. But when we look at the achievement that Ukraine has accomplished, Putin continues to look weak, and somebody who lost his strategic, any sort of parity that there may have been, because now, we just don't know that he's got any planes because that are needed for his delivery of nuclear devices, because those are not being manufactured anymore by Russia, unless he can get, I don't know, from maybe Qatar, because they seem to have a bunch of planes to give away. So maybe that's where he can get some, hook in there. But do you need, what kind of weapons and aviation and fleet do you need in a world where you have unmanned flying and the swimming machines that can take out a ship or a plane, whether it's parked or not parked? So I think that we're seeing some really big changes, and the fact that Donald Trump chooses to be quiet about it or chooses to not acknowledge it doesn't mean that the rest of the world isn't talking about it.
And we can see that Trump becomes an accomplice to Putin's war crime if he supports him.
That would not necessarily be the first time where Donald Trump has found himself in this position, probably this week. Because when we look at the damage that Doge and the cuts that were initiated and supported by this administration have caused, and a number of people all over the world that have already perished because of destruction of USAID and other forms of American help, where we see the world's richest man attacking the world's poorest people and taking away their means of existence to increase his own power. And we saw how futile that is. That's not a person who cares about being a part of a crime or after all, he's already been found guilty of crime, 34 times? So, and that's where consequences are so important. When there are no consequences, then the criminal doesn't say, wow, I really got lucky, I shouldn't do this again. Seems to be like they think the other way around, where they think that they got away once or twice or 34 times. Why stop now? So I think in this situation, not to mention that building good relations with Vladimir Putin has always been a priority for Donald Trump. So for him, if Putin is doing something, then it's got to be a good thing, because Donald Trump thinks that Vladimir Putin is a good guy. So whatever Putin does is a good thing. This is just being part of the gang, I guess. It's more interesting for me to see all the people around Donald Trump, from staffers to senators to, you name it, members of his administration, secretaries, having to partake and become complicit in these horrible potential crimes that are being committed, which will be investigated. After Democrats regain majority in the House of Representatives, and once we have, more independent, once we're back to having independent system of justice, which is what seems to be a big question right now, where Democrats in the House of Representatives are calling on Attorney General Bondi to explain her behavior and her permissive behavior towards things that are done by this administration. administration. So I think that we're going to see many crimes that we're going to be discussing, and Ukraine, unfortunately, it's a reminder to all of us Americans that we voted, whether we voted against or we voted for or we didn't vote, but we had a chance not to have this, because if we had President Kamala Harris right now, we would not be having this conversation. And I think it's important to just briefly remind people of this, because there will be next elections, and it's going to have consequences, just as these elections did. But I think that it seems like it's a long time, and B, we got to do something in the meantime.
But we had some opinions a few months ago, last year, before presidential election in the United States, that if Kamala Harris wins, she will drag out the war for years by giving us a little part of support. But now we cannot see new packages of support by Trump at all.
It's a little bit like people who prevent pandemics. Who is going to thank them for something that did not occur? If we would have had President Kamala Harris, there's no doubt we would have been critical of her, and we would have been right to do so, because policy of the past administration was not sufficient and did not solve the problem. It was clearly too cautious, and as we see now, it was, dare I say, needlessly cautious in its approach to Russian threat. And so if we would have had President Kamala Harris, yes, we would have continued to have insufficient level of help for Ukraine, but at the same time, we would have been also, I think, acutely aware that Vladimir Putin and his criminal regime is getting weaker by the day under pressure of new sanctions and under, as Donald Trump likes to refer, all of those beautiful young men, that are being killed by the thousands, and therefore Vladimir Putin is losing his cannon fodder. All of that would have been leading Russia towards not just defeat, but eventual ability to reinterpret its meaning, because Russia has historically been, as Vitaly Portnikov calls it, a terrorist nation, historically. And so I think that military defeat is so crucial for Russia to just have a chance at try to move in a different direction, because it certainly hasn't shown ability to do so for, I don't know, hundreds of years.
And also Vitaly Portnikov, who is a guest of your broadcasting on your YouTube channel, Rashkin Report. So guys, subscribe to this YouTube channel. A lot of wonderful conversation between Yuri and guests from whole the world. He mentioned in one of his posts that if you let yourself be humiliated, you will be humiliated. So it's like about Donald Trump, yes?
It is, in a sense, that allowing Donald Trump to do what he wants doesn't protect one from anything. We can see it on an example of Columbia University that seems to have surrendered, but now the Trump administration is looking once again from news reports at accreditation of Columbia University in general. But so just making a peace with the administration didn't protect even Colombia. But I want to stop for a second and just acknowledge Vitaly Portnikov, because that is one of those the really, truly remarkable people that comes across once in a very long while. And he's a rare light of somebody who is able to really clearly see the situation in Ukraine and articulate it in such a way that makes a lot of sense for his viewers and listeners, who are frequently overwhelmed under just a constant stream of propaganda that denies people ability to think for themselves. And Vitaly very clearly and diligently explains the news of the day in a way that really invites conversation and thought and critical thought And that is truly something, an honor for me that I get to host a joint stream on both of our channels, because he's got several channels. So it's on his Russian language channel and a Rashkin Report that we once every 2 weeks we get together and I would say hold a master class where I get to learn from Vitaly his take on different views, and sometimes, offer my opinion and my 2 cents as well. But Ukraine is really, and I think one key idea that Vitaly Portnikov has brought to the forefront is the idea of Ukrainian identity and political identity as going beyond what Russia loves to talk about, which is ethnic identity. And whatever you were born as, and that's what you are. And Vitaly's idea of, and as demonstrated by Ukraine, that a nation can forge under stress of invasion, of outer to conflict, and as such develop its identity, where you can have people of all different backgrounds who all consider themselves to be Ukrainian. And I think that's a really important feature of today's world and set of priorities in today's world. And that's one of the many ideas that I feel Vitaly Portnikov brings to this important conversation.
And we are not humiliated. We are strong, confident, and we can destroy Russian important war targets. For example, we, and you has already mentioned about Operation Spiderweb, and now we see that only 7 Russian bombers take part in attack on Ukraine after this Operation Spiderweb, and we had a lot of strong comments about it by our Western allies. I should notice that Ukraine destroyed 34% of Russia's strategic aviation, and Reuters writes that it will take Russia years to recover these losses. To what extent did the special operation Spiderweb show the weakness and worthlessness of the Putin regime, and how it really assessed in the United States? How does Trump assess it? Because we read and see different assessments about this. Somebody can say that he said it was very cool, and others says that he was angry.
I was puzzled by that myself for a second, and so having reviewed both articles, that one of which mentions that he was impressed and the other one that he was more concerned, you do kind of get the picture that this just kind of comes in stages. That first reaction of Donald Trump when he sees somebody showing strength, brute strength, he's impressed. That's just something that is appealing to him, and the fact that Ukraine pulled off such a stunning military operation is, of course, impressive to him on some kind of like a reptilian level. But then after that, he thinks about the fact that all of this is prolonging the so-called, passage to World War III, which in his mind is what Ukraine is doing, fighting Russia instead of just surrendering to it, laying down and dying. And therefore, all of this is protracting the war, and that's, of course, is bad. And clearly, Putin is not going to be happy about this. And then this is just classic. Trump has to prove that he knew nothing about it, because then Putin can hold him responsible that he didn't tell him. And of course, clearly, Ukraine didn't let Trump know, but maybe it would be more useful to say that, of course, we let, Ukraine can say that they notified the White House with plenty of notice for them to relay the information to anybody who they consider relevant to this. And they didn't. So it's really all on the White House that they knew everything but didn't report to Kremlin in time. Ooh, not good. But at the same time, it's there's possibilities of making jokes about this. Doesn't change the fact that we have a very friendly administration in the White House, very friendly to Russia. Unfortunately, of all things, being friendly to, being Russia is, being friendly to like deadly spiders and being friendly to really horrible things.
But we see that our Ukrainian forces are the best way to stop Putin, even if Donald Trump will withdraw from negotiation process.
Yes, I think that's always been the case, and I think Europe is recognizing this now, and it's important to see that Europe is starting to send messages that they are able to sustain and to support Ukraine with or without you, as was said in a great song by a great singer. So I think that this is another big loss for Donald Trump, because he was of the impression that he can buy and sell Ukraine however he feels inclined to. And so he decided to rob it on the way back to Russia by trying to, pick through Ukrainian pockets and get all the rare earth minerals that he so desperately needs that it looks like China won't give him. But in the end, he is just going to turn it over to Putin. So these, whatever negotiations or any attempts at make peace, Donald Trump is showing himself as an unreliable partner who shifted from being from a country that was being leader of the free world to a country that appears to be practically another part of Russian Empire. And knowing all of this, recognizing all of this is a very painful realization. But clarity is crucial, because I think having clarity gives us the ability to move in the right direction. And so, thanks to Zelensky, who showed that he can, poke his, nose through the fake fire. And this is a reference to Pinocchio. To anybody can recall this. But there was Pinocchio who poked a hole in his dad's. Long story short, go Zelensky. He showed us what was going on with Trump. But now we are seeing Trump show this all the time, every day. And I just find it interesting what is happening with Elon Musk and Trump, because it is a big development of what is with Donald Trump. You have to deny reality. And if you're not denying reality, now you're starting to be an enemy of Donald Trump. And what does Elon Musk show? He shows that he is not afraid to admit to the obvious, that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were good and close friends. There's lots of video of this proof. It's just one of those things that, it's kind of not nice to say about President of the United States, but that's one of those things that it's very obvious. Next thing Elon Musk could say is that this is all just an opportunity for enrichment of president. That would be another truth that he could let himself see, should he feel like he can afford to speak the truth. But it seems like with Prigozhin, they do it when the end is near. And they don't know it, but we'll see what happens. And of course, the ultimate truth that Elon Musk could say to Donald Trump is that, hello, excuse me, are you working for Kremlin, or are you just in love with Kremlin? Could you clarify? Because it sure doesn't look like you're working for the American people. That would be saying the most obvious thing. But until then, Elon Musk kind of has to work up his bravery and courage to being able to announce those kinds of 2 + 2 = 4 kind of truisms.
Yes, but we think that this Trump-Musk scandal can really have a big internal and external risks for the United States of America and for Trump personally.
Absolutely, because a big part of Trump's base also loves Musk. And so now we're seeing how sad they are about parents divorcing. And particularly, it's interesting to see the congressmen and how they're sad about their parents. I call this the conflict between the wallet and the keys, because Republican congressmen, they need the Musk wallet, but they also need Papa Trump's keys to get into the house. And so which do they go? They would like to have both. And so those kinds of challenges is what we get when we have these heroes that we put on, make monuments and, out of them and worship them, and then they get into a fight. And which was predictable. It was so predictable that it seems kind of weird that the only person who didn't seem to know it is like the richest guy on earth. he's the only one who didn't realize that they were going to have a falling out and that President of the United States is going to have more power than, I don't know, a billionaire? Because this president of the United States doesn't really care what he has to do if he decides to hurt somebody. And so, I mean, he might forget about him. That's the best thing that what it seems like one can hope for. But in Elon Musk's case, he doesn't seem to be particularly wanting to be forgotten. So this is going to be, I think, just a experience where Elon Musk thought that he could buy a president because, he spent $300 million or close to it. Turns out he was partially right because the president is not going to be now following the law and doing all those kinds of silly things. He's going to be using the law to crush this person who is now, going against the president. This is going to be potentially an example that will be made out of Elon Musk. And as was pointed out by Peter Baker at New York Times, which I think quite fairly, is that maybe not right now, but down the road, there could be a situation where the government will just nationalize these Musk businesses because they're so important for national defense and so on. And of course, at this point, you got to give it to Russia for trolling because they're offering Elon Musk political asylum in Russia now. And considering all sorts of crazy people that run away to Russia in the end, it's a crazy place.
Yuri, and we have a few minutes. What did Friedrich Merz understand about Putin? And how do you assess this visit that he tried to explain this understandable thing for Merz to Trump, but it seems to us that this visit was rather good and calm, not like visit of Cyril Ramaphosa or Vladimir Zelensky on February this year, but without any progressive results.
Well, it is interesting that this was a much more peaceful and cautious. You see cautious Trump, who is a little uncertain about this German guy that he kind of respects because Germans, I guess, do things well and they do these nice things like BMWs and Mercedes and fancy things. And Trump, being kind of racist, kind of respects that. That's his problem. But I think that Merz handled it really well, because he was very humorless about this experience. He went straightforward, explaining that the United States played an important role in ending World War II. And of course, that's where Donald Trump remembered that D-Day was invasion attack on Germany. And here he is sitting next to a German. And of course, being attacked is far more important than defeating whatever ideology is running your country, because, power is everything and the rest is details and transactional. So I guess there's the justification for Trump liking Hitler. But moving on, we see that Merz, who says, no, thank you. This was not a bad day for Germany. This was beginning of our liberation. And you got to give it to Merz, because he could have made a joke about Trump and his liberation day and how well that went. But instead, Merz just made a very straightforward point, saying that America stopped one war and America can stop another war if it applies pressure on Russia. And until he said Russia, Donald Trump was in agreement. But at that point, when he hears word Russia, he clearly realizes that this video will be seen in Kremlin. And he makes adjustments and he immediately has to backpedal. And it's kind of interesting to see it on his face. I bought recently this watch, and I ended up getting a new watch because this watch was ticking so loudly I could hear it. And so this kind of like with Donald Trump, where you can kind of see him ticking so loudly, that was obvious that he was just very concerned about how this video was going to be viewed by Vladimir Putin. And is he now going to have to apologize for something that he didn't mean to say to Vladimir? It very looks, one big Helsinki here every day. But at the same time, this was a wrestling match, because that's the kind of format in which Donald Trump operates best. And Friedrich Merz came out of it very respectably. And I think he handled himself very well. And that's another path forward for a leader who wants to get through a meeting with Trump one way or another. And the fact that he is not a personal enemy of Trump's friend made, like, Ramaphosa was a enemy of Musk or Zelensky, the enemy of Putin. Merz, I guess, doesn't rise to that level quite yet, and so the Trump was a little cautious with him, and that's good to see that he can do that as well if he wants to.
Yuri, thank you very much. Thank you for this conversation, as usual, for your clever comments and opinion. See you next week. Take care. Glad to see you.
Thank you and take care.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English. Irina Uslova, my name. Thank you guys for joining us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rashkin Report and War and Politics 24. And see you next week.